I think we've all been there at some point, right? Like daydreaming about a job that doesn't just, pay the bills, but actually gets you jazzed to get out of bed in the morning.
Oh, yeah, totally. Like finding work that actually lights you up instead of draining you. That's the dream.
Exactly. And that's what we're diving into today, this whole idea of finding a fulfilling career path and how to avoid that dreaded career regret.
And we've got a fantastic guide for this journey, a guy named Wayne Hume.
Yeah, Wayne's story is so interesting. He's got this crazy, impressive resume, Goldman Sachs, McKinsey, Google, you name it.
Like the top of the top.
Yeah. But here's the thing. He wasn't happy.
Wow.
It took him almost a decade bouncing between these like super prestigious jobs before he finally realized like, wait a second, this isn't it.
It really makes you think, like if someone like that with all the success in the world isn't happy, what does that say about our typical definition of success?
Right. And now, as a venture capitalist, Wayne is sharing all this hard-won wisdom in a YouTube video he did called #1 Most Valuable Lesson I Learned at Harvard Business School: How to Avoid Regret.
I love that title. It's like he's giving us a cheat sheet to career happiness based on his own like real life experience in the trenches.
Totally. And one of the first things he talks about is this idea of the paradox of choice. You know how we're constantly told that having more options is better?
Yeah, like the more choices, the better.
Right. But Wayne actually argues that this overabundance of options can be totally paralyzing.
Oh, I see what you mean. It's like you're standing in front of an ice cream counter with like 50 flavors, and suddenly you can't even decide if you even want ice cream.
Exactly. It's almost like too much choice makes it harder to choose, not easier. And Wayne argues that this can actually lead to more regret down the road.
That makes sense. You're always wondering, like, did I pick the right flavor? Do I miss out on something better?
Right. So then he throws out this idea of extended consistency, which sounds kind of counterintuitive.
Yeah. What is that?
Well, instead of endlessly agonizing over the perfect choice, you pick something and really commit to it for a good chunk of time.
Like, how long are we talking here?
He suggests like 2 years as a good starting point.
That's a pretty solid commitment.
It is. But the idea is to really immerse yourself in a field, gain experience and insight to see if it's truly a good fit.
So it's not just about following a fleeting interest. It's about really giving something a shot.
Exactly. Like, you know how people say you don't really know someone until you've lived with them?
Oh, yeah.
It's kind of like that with careers. You don't really know if it's right for you until you've really lived it.
I like that. Yeah. So instead of just endlessly swiping through job postings, we should be thinking about how to really dive deep into a field.
Exactly. And Wayne gives this example of product management or engineering, seeing a product through from start to finish, feeling that sense of accomplishment when it launches.
Yeah, that must feel amazing to see something you worked on out there in the world.
Totally.
Yeah.
And that kind of experience gives you a powerful feedback loop, right? It tells you, yeah, this is the kind of work that really gets me going.
Feedback loops. I like that. So it's not just about finding something you enjoy doing. It's about finding something with a feedback loop that matches your personality.
Yeah. Your need for validation or a sense of progress.
And different fields have different feedback loop timelines, right?
Absolutely. Like in some industries, like software development, those loops are really tight. You code something, test it, and see the results often within days or even hours.
Yeah. That must be super motivating to see your work come to life so quickly.
It can be.
Yeah.
But then you have fields like venture capital, where it might take 10 or 15 years to really know if an investment paid off.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's a whole different ballgame. Requires a lot of patience.
For sure. And even if you commit to something for a couple of years and realize it's not the perfect fit, well, you've still gained valuable experience.
You've learned something about yourself, right? About what you do and don't want in a career.
Exactly. And speaking of learning about yourself, Wayne also pushes back against this idea of a single predetermined passion.
You mean like that one thing we're all supposed to discover that's going to make us blissfully happy for the rest of our lives?
Yeah, he thinks that's kind of a myth.
Really?
He's much more interested in what sparks your curiosity over time.
So instead of chasing this elusive passion, maybe we should be paying more attention to the things that consistently make us go, huh, that's really interesting. I wonder why.
Exactly. Those little sparks of curiosity, they can often lead us to work that we're not just good at, but that we genuinely enjoy doing.
And that, my friend, is where things start to get really interesting.
So we've talked about choice and committing to something, but there's another really important piece of the puzzle,
Okay.
and I think it'll resonate with anyone who's ever felt kind of stuck in their career.
You mean like they're not getting the recognition they deserve, Or maybe they're just not feeling fulfilled.
Exactly. Wayne talks about the importance of being recognized and rewarded for your work.
Right. Because even if you're talented and you love what you do, you still need to be in the right environment.
It's like a plant, right?
Yeah.
You could have the best seeds in the world,
Yeah.
but if you plant them in bad soil with no sunlight, they're never going to grow.
So true.
Yeah.
So how do we find that fertile ground, that organizational context where our skills can really flourish?
Well, Wayne gives this really practical framework for evaluating a job or a company.
Okay, I'm listening.
First, understand the business model.
Makes sense.
Like, how does the company actually make money? What are the key drivers of their success?
Yeah. Got to know the fundamentals.
Then zoom in on the team dynamics.
Interesting.
Is your team respected within the organization? Do they have influence?
Huh?
What about your manager? Are they someone who advocates for their team, helps people grow?
It's like you need to do your due diligence, not just on the role itself, but on the whole ecosystem you're stepping into.
Exactly. And then he tells this cautionary tale about Franz Kafka,
Oh, yeah, the writer.
who was stuck in this soul-crushing job at an insurance company.
I didn't know that about him.
It's a reminder that talent alone isn't enough.
Wow. You can be brilliant,
Yeah,
but if you're in the wrong environment, it might never see the light of day.
totally. It makes you think about being intentional about where you work
Right, really assessing the culture, the values.
before you jump in.
But even when you find a good fit, I imagine there are still days when you're just not feeling it.
Oh, for sure. Even in a dream job, motivation comes and goes.
So how do you deal with those days when you're just not feeling motivated?
Well, Wayne has this great tip.
Oh, yeah.
He calls it the one paragraph trick.
Okay, I like where this is going.
So when you're feeling stuck, you just commit to writing one paragraph
That's it.
or making one phone call, sending one email.
Lowering the barrier to entry.
Exactly. And usually once you take that first step,
The rest just flows.
it's like that saying, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step.
I love that.
But here it's like the journey of finishing that massive report begins with a single paragraph.
Right. And speaking of journeys, let's talk about the people you surround yourself with.
Ah, the company you keep.
Wayne makes this point that your colleagues become a huge part of your life,
You spend so much time with them.
more than with your family sometimes.
So choosing who you work with is almost as important as choosing the work itself.
You really need to find people you respect and admire, people you can learn from.
And Wayne talks about finding people with shared values.
Yeah, but complementary skill sets.
He uses this phrase, zones of genius. I love that.
So it's not just about finding people who are just like you.
Right. It's about recognizing that everyone has their own unique strengths.
And when you bring those diverse perspectives together,
You can create something truly special.
like a dream team,
But beyond just skills and talent, there's this deeper level,
finding meaning in your work.
which can feel overwhelming, especially for young people just starting out.
Right, like what is my purpose?
Wayne uses this powerful analogy
Tell me.
about building a cathedral. He talks about these two women laying bricks.
Right.
And when asked what they're doing, one woman says, I'm laying bricks side by side. The other woman says, I'm building a cathedral.
Wow, that's so powerful. Same action, totally different mindset.
And that's the difference between just going through the motions and working with a sense of purpose.
But how do we actually find that sense of meaning? Like, where do we even start?
Well, Wayne says meaning isn't something you just stumble upon,
You have to build it,
brick by brick.
starting with your values.
What do you truly care about? What impact do you want to make?
Then you find work that aligns with those values.
Work that lets you use your talents to make a difference.
So it's a process of self-discovery.
And intentional action.
You have to put yourself out there, explore different opportunities.
Experiment until you find that sweet spot.
For your passion, your purpose, your skills all come together.
And remember, even the most fulfilling careers have their ups and downs.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But when you're working towards something you believe in,
It makes those challenges feel more manageable.
like stepping stones instead of roadblocks.
It's like you're building a cathedral, one brick at a time.
And even though it's hard work,
It's so rewarding to see it all come together.
and I think that's a good place to pause and reflect.
Yeah, catch our breath.
Think about what resonates with you most from Wayne's advice.
What feels relevant to your own career journey?
We'll be back in the next part to wrap things up and explore some specific strategies.
For finding and creating work that feels meaningful.
Until then, keep building your cathedral. Okay, so back to this whole cathedral idea. It's stuck with me. You know, it's such a powerful image. And it makes me wonder about Wayne's own cathedral. Like
Yeah.
what's driving him? What's that bigger purpose he's aiming for?
Well, he's actually talked about that pretty openly. He sees his mission as raising the collective level of empathy in the world.
Hmm. That's pretty ambitious.
It is. And he's doing it through venture capital.
Oh, wow. How so?
Investing in startups that are tackling some pretty big issues, like access to education, social connection, breaking down barriers between people.
It's really cool to see someone align their career so closely with their values. Like, it gives me hope.
I know what you mean. It's inspiring. But I
Hmm.
think for a lot of people, especially those early in their careers, finding that kind of mission-driven work can feel pretty overwhelming.
Totally. Like, where do you even begin?
Yeah. Wayne actually has some good advice for that. He
Yeah.
says pay attention to those persistent sparks of curiosity,
Okay, like, what do you mean?
those things that consistently draw your attention, even if other people find them totally mundane.
Like, what? You mean, like, if I'm fascinated by, like, the history of paper clips?
Sure, why not? It could be anything. What are the problems you find yourself always thinking about? What kind of impact do you dream of making? Those questions are like breadcrumbs, leading you towards your own unique mission.
Hmm. Instead of follow your bliss, it's more like follow your curiosity.
Exactly. Or follow that nagging sense that something needs to change.
Yeah. And sometimes those breadcrumbs lead you down paths you never expected.
Right. Wayne tells this story about John Doerr, the famous venture capitalist.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of him.
He actually admits that luck played a big role in his success. He kind of stumbled into venture capital by chance.
Really?
Yeah. And it turned out to be his calling.
So sometimes it's not about having this grand plan. It's about being open to new experiences and willing to pivot when opportunity knocks.
Absolutely.
Mm.
And Wayne also points out that your mission doesn't have to be this fixed, unchanging thing. It could evolve over time.
As you learn and grow.
Exactly. The key is to stay curious,
Mm.
keep learning, keep growing, and be willing to adjust your course.
So it's less about finding your mission and more about creating it.
I like that, shaping it as you go along.
Which brings us back to this idea of building a cathedral. It's not about finding a pre-existing structure. It's about taking those raw materials,
Yeah,
your experiences, skills, values, and deliberately crafting something meaningful.
it's about finding those moments of joy and purpose amidst the inevitable challenges.
It's about making a contribution that aligns with who you are and what you believe in.
Exactly.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I think the biggest takeaway is that it's not just about finding the right job.
It's about cultivating the right mindset.
A mindset of curiosity action and a willingness to embrace the journey.
Even when it takes unexpected turns.
It's about building your own cathedral, brick by brick, with intention and purpose.
And remember, even if you haven't figured it all out yet, that's okay.
Yeah.
Just keep exploring, keep learning, and keep building.
I love that. That's such a great note to end on. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.